Welcome back, everybody, to another episode and a new season of Geekorama, the podcast by geeks for geeks. We are sponsored by superherofiction.com, the one-stop shop for all your superhero novel needs, and now officially the largest website dedicated to superhero fiction. We are your hosts.
I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Notre Dame's universe.
And I am T.L. Heinrich, author of the Vigilantes superhero universe. What are we talking about this week?
We are going to be talking about Wonder Woman 84. But not only are we going to be talking about that, we've decided to change things up just a little bit for season 2. So we're going to offer even more geek recommendations for you. And hopefully you geek out as much as we do.
So we're going to start off with our new segment, The Pull List. Jeremy, what do you have for us today on the pull list?
So any comic book geek knows that the pull list is the best things that you want from your comic book store. So you're pulling them off the shelves to make sure that someone else doesn't buy them, because that just makes comic book geeks angry. So not that I've ever experienced that. But this week, it's a new year, so I'm allowed to talk about X-Men. Surprise. I'm actually going to be talking about my least favorite X-Men, which is Wolverine. So I have been using the Marvel Unlimited app. So all the comic books that I'm going to be talking about are going to be about 6 months from when they're originally listed. But for those of you who have Marvel Unlimited, these are showing up right now on the app. So Wolverine number 5, written by Benjamin Percy, has our favorite tortured soul doing what he does best, questioning his life choices. Sure. X-Men has kind of had a little bit of an issue since their relaunch, and I've been questioning why I'm still reading some of it. But Wolverine is pulling in one of my favorite bad guys, which is Omega Red. And you would think Wolverine and Omega Red is going to be an epic fight to the death. Well, it gets a little bit weird because now there's vampires, and Omega Red is part of the Vampire Nation. So,
okay.
Yeah, as weird as you think. But in true Wolverine fashion, we don't need a good man. We need a man willing to slice and dice everybody. And that's basically what we're getting. The artwork is phenomenal and the writing is pretty solid. So I think in my grand scheme of ratings, I would give it... I'm going to give it 3.5 capes. It's good. Oh. It's worth reading, but I wouldn't necessarily call it essential must-reads.
Okay. 3.5.
So what about you? What's on the pull list?
The pull list today, well, as most of you know, I don't tend to read very many comic books. That's Jeremy's comic book dude. I am the prose fiction dude and I am just finishing up the second in Elizabeth Lim's Blood of the Stars duology, Unravel the Dusk. And this series is fascinating. It is Asian-inspired high fantasy. The first book was Mulan meets Project Runway, and it was phenomenal. And the second book, it picks up right where the first one leaves off. Spoilers, so if you don't want to hear it, you might want to skip this. But our female protagonist was got kind of wounded by a demon, and so she's got a demon that's being born inside of her, and it's going to take over her body and her soul. And the kingdom that she lives in and that she sacrificed for in the first book, her and the man she had fallen in love with in the first book, the kingdom is about to fall big time to the big bad. And so the second book is all about her trying to save her country, even as she is bit by bit, the pieces of her soul are getting eaten up and dying. And she's trying to hold on long enough to use her new demon powers to save her country, while the man that she loves is trying to save her. So it's romantic. It sounds angsty, but it's actually not all that angsty. I'm kind of surprised. The female protagonist is incredibly heroic. Like, she's actually reminding me of a lot of heroes, that we look at their stories and we see the cost of the power and the heroic call on them. Kind of like, I would say, Captain America, the first Avenger, you know, that cost, like he wants to go back and dance with the woman he loves, but the real cost of his heroism is essentially dying. So that is, there's a lot of those themes in this book that the female protagonist is wrestling with, you know, the cost of heroism, the cost of power. And so Elizabeth Lim, she's an Asian American author. I highly recommend this duology. You can find it in print and ebook. I think it's an audio, but I haven't listened to it, so I don't know the quality. And I am actually going to give this 5 capes because it is beautifully written, beautifully plotted. The characters are compelling. It's first-person narration, which I usually don't like, but I am loving it. And the world building is just incredible. So 5 out of 5 capes is what I'm giving it. So.
And if you want more book suggestions, you can always stop by Superhero Fiction and read our editorial reviews. They've been going up, and we've got some good finds for you happening on there.
We do.
Ready to geek out?
I am so ready to geek out.
I could hear this a mile away. I knew it was coming the moment Netflix showed it to me. All right, you just need to go first because it's to be contained.
All right, so I am going to say spoilers for Cobra Kai season 3. So if you haven't seen it, get your butt on over to Netflix, then come back and listen to this. So Cobra Kai season 2 has left us on this huge cliffhanger. Miguel is paralyzed after getting kicked off the second floor balcony of the school. The school is in utter chaos. Sam is hospitalized. No more karate. John Kreese has taken over Cobra Kai. Johnny has been told by Miguel's mom, we don't want you around here anymore, which totally seemed to put the nail in the coffin of their burgeoning romance, which pissed me off. And I was dying. And look, there wasn't that big of a gap between season 2 coming out and season 3 premiering, but it felt like for fucking ever. So on New Year's Day, we were given a late Christmas gift of Cobra Kai season 3, and let me tell you, it was worth the wait. It was a little bit different. It was a little slower. I will say it was pace-wise, it was a slower season than the first 2, which just came at you like with a ton of karate chops and kicks, if I could just be corny for a minute. But the character development really was on full display. They ramped up the character development. They ramped up the evil, honestly, from John Kreese. He went from, okay, you're kind of a psycho, to just full-on evil. It's got all the characters that you want. It's got all of the things that I, as a fan, wanted to happen, happened. Miguel got better. Johnny was welcomed back into Miguel's family. Johnny and Carmen got together. I'm very excited. Miguel, it looks like Miguel and Sam might be getting back together again, but to be honest with you, I'm kind of done with the love square isosceles triangle weird shit going on. Like, I just don't care. I think that Miguel deserves better than both Tori and Sam, to be honest with you, because Miguel is just fabulous. Johnny helps him learn how to walk again in true Johnny Lawrence style, taking him to a underground rock concert when everything else wasn't working, to get Miguel to just have some fun. And at the concert, Miguel ends up being able to tap his foot. He hadn't been able to move his legs in 2 months. And so it's just these great bonding scenes between Johnny and Miguel. And then you've got Ralph Macchio's character, Danny, actually goes to Okinawa, which I thought was going to be so stupid. I was like, this is the dumbest thing they've ever done. But he goes to Okinawa, and we have our 2 characters, the nemesis and the love interest from Karate Kid 2 show up. And it's actually not cheesy at all. I absolutely loved it. There was a moment that had me yelling at Danny, "You're married," because he has this little moment with I forget the character's name, but the love interest from Karate Kid 2, and you're just like, dude, you're married. Your wife is back in America. Don't even think about it. but it was really, really good. And the thing that I wanted, and I think all fans really wanted, which was Johnny and Danny to really put aside their differences, realize they have more in common than they thought, and come together. That happened at the end, but the reason it happens is because Elizabeth Shue comes back and reprises her role as Allie, and basically tells the two of them they're being dumb little fucktards. I probably shouldn't say that word. That's probably not a great expression. Sorry. But they're being dumb, basically. And they need to get along, and they need to put the past in the past, and they need to stop reliving the past and look forward to the future and choose the future that they both want. And so at the end of the third season, it ends up that Johnny's group and Danny's group, they come together and they make the decision to take down Cobra Kai at the All Valley Karate Tournament in season 4. It's a loser leaves town. So the thing is John Kreese is like, fine, you want me gone? Then you have to beat my dojo at the tournament.
I have to admit, I got excited. I haven't watched any of it yet, but I got excited when I heard that Hilary Swank might be in season 4.
So that's something I was totally wondering about, because they're bringing in, and I think I saw Karate Kid 3, but I don't remember, but they're bringing back Terry Silver, who is the one that took over Cobra Kai in Karate Kid 3. And everything I've read, fan reactions about Terry Silver is he's 10 times worse than Kreese, which is kind of shocking because Kreese allowed a student to literally beat a kid into a bloody pulp. I mean, the kid, they don't show the kid's face is getting beat up. They have it where the camera is pointing up and you can see the fists. But when the kid gets off of him, he has blood running down his fingers. It's just, another kid literally gets his arm snapped in half. I mean, and this is all stuff that Kreese is encouraging people to do. And so that's the one thing I will say is this was a different kind of violence this season. It was, somebody kind of compared it to the Harry Potter movies where, the Harry Potter movies got darker and more violent. They were, they were expected that you would grow with the story. That's what this kind of is the violence has a bit more of a dark edge to it than the other 2 seasons. So I will say that if you're really sensitive to that kind of thing, or kids that have been watching it with you watch it first before you let your kids see it, because it might be a little too much.
Going to be funny because you're talking about all the violent stuff today and I'm talking about the fun-loving film.
I know. What is your geek out?
So I had the chance to watch, I didn't even know this was a thing. It was never on my radar. Amazon Prime finally suggested something that I actually liked. Amazon Prime is basically a cesspool of bad movies, so my expectations were pretty low going into it. But I wound up sitting down and watching Super Bob. Yes, you heard it. Super Bob.
Okay, what is this? This title is really interesting.
So the main character's name is Robert, and his super name is Super Bob.
Okay.
So in this universe, there is only one superhero, Super Bob. He got his powers because of a meteorite situation, and he is the only one with powers, and he works for the United Kingdom, the British government, basically being their superhero on call. And there is kind of a little bit of a humorous twist to it. It's done documentary style, except he is the most awkward human being in the world. And so you both want to hug him and slap him at the same time. And it's really well acted for that, because that is what you're supposed to be feeling.
Okay.
The whole movie is not done documentary style. It's kind of done in little vignettes. And so it's Super Bob, and he lives at his house, and he has private security that lives in the shed out back. And it basically takes place on Tuesday, which is his day off.
Okay.
And there is a romance plot, because the person interviewing him asks, "Oh, when was the last, or is there someone special?" No. "When was the last time you went out?" 6 years ago. And he gets really excited because he's kind of been digging this woman at the library, and he kept going back and getting all these books, and he's never read any of the books.
Oh.
But one of the books, because the first book she recommended was called House of Leaves, which I snorted and laughed hysterically, and no one else would get the joke. But every graphic designer has a copy of House of Leaves on their shelf. Not a single graphic designer has ever read it. It's a book that at times you have to turn it around and upside down.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It makes no sense, but it's really cool in the way it's designed. So we all own a copy. And the best part to it is people in the UK have no problem making fun of people in the UK. And so there's constant jokes about the amount of paperwork he has to do. And you're like, hee, I know that's a joke about the UK. But to make it even better, his boss, at the Ministry of Defense, is Catherine Tate.
Oh my God, I love her.
And she is in a serious role that there is comedy around, like situational comedy, but she is not funny. She is actually quite dry. And I was like, wow, Catherine Tate, by not being funny, you're still stealing the show. And then there's a subplot about how America hates Super Bob because he refuses to shake their hands. That is the actual plot.
Oh my
But
God.
ultimately, it's this adorable story about a man trying to do his best, not always succeeding, making a fool of himself, and ultimately finding love.
Aww.
So it's incredibly sweet. There is one scene of action in the whole thing, and it's not action. He shows up after the action, and it's like post-action cleanup. And so you're not going to see outstanding special effects. It's where superhero movies and the Hallmark Channel had a love child.
Oh, well, that's an interesting description, actually.
It was cute, and at the end, I actually found myself going, "Aw." There is a sweet romance scene in there that Spider-Man and Captain America have tried to get and never succeeded.
Aww.
So I would highly recommend it. It's like an hour and a half long. It's on Amazon Prime, and it just gives you the warm fuzzies.
I'll have to try that. I'm looking for something to watch.
Not quite kid. No, not kid friendly.
Yeah. No. Dan and I will probably watch it. Like
definitely adult, but it's a curl up on the couch with your special someone type movie. So
okay.
I definitely recommend it. So
I'll try it.
While you're talking about pulverizing faces, I'm eating boxes of chocolate.
It was shockingly violent, honestly. Like I was like, there's a lot of blood. It was a lot of blood that season.
How the tables have turned for season 2.
Yeah. Yeesh.
All right. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to deep dive into Wonder Woman 84.
Behind every great superhero story is a sleep-deprived author. Join Franklin Kendrick every Friday as he takes you behind the mask and asks today's hottest superhero authors the burning question we all want to know. Do they always write in spandex, or is that just a weekend thing?
All right. And we're back to deep dive into Wonder Woman 84. So,
if it needs to be said, spoilers.
We're gonna tear this open all over the place. You saw this actually on Christmas Day, didn't you?
I did. Dan and I, it was one of our Christmas presents to each other. We opened our Christmas gifts to each other Christmas night. So we opened our presents, we poured ourselves some wine, and then we went and watched Wonder Woman 84 that night.
I wound up having to wait another week, which weirdly enough, other than watching people say, I hate it, I love it, nothing was spoiled for me. So
People generally were pretty good until about a week later, and then people were just like, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. And I was guilty of that too, because I just wasn't thinking.
And people get worked up over it. I think we're going to see more and more of this, because now that people are watching things at home.
Yeah, there's more streaming going on. And
a greater amount of people see it at a time, whereas in a movie theater, it kind of happens in waves.
Yeah.
There's like the big weekend wave, and then a lull, and then a weekend wave, and a lull. So this is the follow-up to, I don't even know what year Wonder Woman was, but the sequel.
The pre-COVID. Who cares? It's pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. So we have the same cast of characters being revived here. We have Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman and Chris Pine as Steve Trevor. Steve Trevor, thank you. I was like, both first names, what are they? And then otherwise, there really wasn't any reoccurring characters.
Well, there was Hippolyta and Antiope, because we get a flashback to Themyscira, which was actually delightful. Oh my God, I love that scene. And they actually got the same girl that played her. The little girl that played Diana in the original movie was here to come back for a more like prepubescent version of Diana.
The flashback was the only good part of the movie.
Remy and I disagree a little bit about how bad it was. Now, I'm not saying it was a 5-star film. But I wasn't expecting a 5-star film either. I just wanted a fun Wonder Woman movie. That's all I wanted.
So we've been getting this hyped up for a little while, and I think that also is part of the problem. And I think we're going to see Black Widow is going to have the same problem.
Oh yeah.
After a year of hype, it either is going to be cinematic magic, or you fail.
Yeah.
You only have 2 options after a year. The same thing happened to New Mutants. It got delayed for 2 years, and by the time it came out, you were like, meh. If it had just come out, I would have been like, oh, not bad, not great, but I enjoyed it. But after 2 years, it should have delivered gold to my house.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest issue I had with this is the 84 part. They hyped this up to such a degree. The posters were phenomenal. The clips were great. And then this movie could have taken place last year.
Yeah.
Other than the obnoxious mall scene.
I loved that scene.
There was nothing 1984 about this movie.
Yeah, there was no plot reason to put it to like the first Wonder Woman movie. There was plot reason to anchor it in the First World War. It actually made far more sense to do that in the First World War than the second, with all the themes about war and humanity and everything they were trying to do. It was perfect. And I expected the setting of it, the year, to tie in better, but you're absolutely correct. They could have put it at any time in history and it wouldn't have made a difference, honestly.
It could have been Wonder Woman 1991, and it would have served the props department would have had one scene to change.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, our shoulder pads need to be a little bit smaller. There were no shoulder pads, by the way. I did notice that. Kristen Wiig's outfits were very indicative of a period.
Yeah.
Diana's not.
That white dress was not 80s.
No. She was very timeless.
Yes.
You missed an opportunity.
Part of the point, but I really did want to see that glorious mid-80s fashion on full display, and it really wasn't. And
we made the comparison to Stranger Things. I watched all superhero movies with a couple buddies, and Stranger Things is very rooted in the 80s.
Very.
And it really taps into that sense of nostalgia. So the older audience who's watching it goes, oh man, I remember growing up in that period. And younger people are like, why don't they have phones? So in this...
Well, if you compare the mall scene in the last season of Stranger Things to the mall scene in Wonder Woman, and I will give you this, it was, while I loved the mall scene in Wonder Woman for the nostalgia bit, because I grew up near a mall like that. Like, so for me, it was very like, oh, look, I'm an 80s mall, oh my God. But in Stranger Things, they tied in that mall nostalgia throughout the entire series, or season. the ice cream, the movie theater, the final battle there. It was beautifully done, and it felt like in Wonder Woman it was a little bit of just kind of thrown in there without sinking and rooting the story in the time period. That was disappointing to me.
And if this had taken place in 2017, nothing would have changed, actually. Not one bit of the plot would have really altered. The fashion in one scene would have been drastically different. Mm-hmm. Pedro Pascal might have had a different haircut.
Yeah, he might not have looked so much like someone.
Like Jeremy Renner.
I was thinking like Trump. He had the Trump. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the hair.
Yeah, definitely.
It was a calculated jab.
It was a very calculated choice. Can we talk about Pedro Pascal really quick?
Oh yeah, So in this movie, the main villain is Pedro Pascal, and the overall plot is he winds up getting access to a gem that allows people to grant wishes, and his wish is to become the wish stone. And what the wish stone does is every time someone makes a wish, the stone takes the most treasured thing in your life. Uh-huh. So when Diana makes her wish, she loses her powers because that's what she treasures. So he becomes the stone and he convinces people to make wishes so that he obtains their most prized possession. Uh-huh. So that is the overall villain plot.
And it ends up completely disrupting the balance of the world in small and very large ways. It bisects countries. It deprives poor people of resources. It multiplies nuclear weapons and takes the world to the brink of a nuclear holocaust. It costs people their health. It costs people their lives.
It could have
big things.
In the 80s, rooted in the 80s, it could have tapped more into the
Cold War.
The Cold War and the Red Fear and missed opportunity.
They came up to the edge of that with the Middle Eastern oil politics, honestly. But again, they didn't cross that line. It was almost like, I don't know. It was like either they didn't want to commit to one thing, because they could have gone all in with the Middle Eastern crises and the oil crises during the 80s. They could have gone all in with the Cold War in the 80s, but they didn't go all in with either of those things. And again, those would have rooted it in that decade. It would have rooted it in 1984, much more. But it's like they didn't, either they were like too afraid to cross that line, or they just didn't want to. It doesn't make any sense to me, honestly.
And Pedro Pascal, we know him from Mandalorian. We know him from Game of Thrones. He is a solid actor.
Yeah.
We've got no problem with him. In this movie, and it almost felt like he was told to be a caricature of a human. He was.
I thought his performance was okay, but I thought he was okay, but he's supposed to be very erratic, and he pulled that off very well. He did chew some scenery, but I think that's okay if you're going to go for this level of bad guy. He ran up to the line of chewing it a little too much, and he didn't cross that line, I don't think.
And here is my problem. He wasn't the villain of the story.
I've seen other people argue that.
He did make a plot loosely, but realistically, right from the get-go, he's actually just a misguided hero. So he does all of this because he's trying to prove himself to be a capable man so that his son respects him.
Yeah. He had a sympathetic motivation. Whereas if you contrast it with Kristen Wiig's Cheetah, you could say that Cheetah had a selfish motivation. I've seen some people draw that, and I think that's an oversimplification, honestly, of Kristen Wiig's motivation as Cheetah.
I think she had the better villain motivation, which we got to see on screen.
Yeah.
His was just a washed up car salesman trying to make good on his determination to be rich.
Well, and I think what we want, we want the villain and the hero to come to blows. We want to see those scenes. And so I again, bringing up Captain America, the First Avenger, because I think it's pretty much the closest thing I've ever seen to a perfect superhero film. And we see Steve and the Red Skull come head to head several times until that leads up to that big pivotal fight in the plane. We didn't have that with Max Lord. Max Lord and Wonder Woman never threw down physically. Now, emotionally, they did at the end. And I want to talk about that as a quintessential Wonder Woman moment later. But we never saw, there was no real conflict between Max Lord and Wonder Woman, not directly. It was an indirect conflict. Cheetah and Wonder Woman was not only a direct conflict, but you had the added agony of them having started out as friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Diana seeing that friendship disintegrate before her eyes. And I think if they had stuck with that, if they had chosen Cheetah as the antagonist and given us a little bit more of that relationship up front, so we got a little bit more attached to that, and we participate in the agony that Diana feels in losing that friendship, it would have made a stronger film.
There were a lot of macro problems. My micro problem, that list is a mile long and will never ever. I could start a whole podcast on that. One of my biggest issues is we've already seen this movie. It was called Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Max Lord is Doc Ock, the sympathetic villain. There is the friend enemy with Hobgoblin.
Yep.
It is almost verbatim the same plot.
What's interesting, though, is I would argue in Spider-Man 2, I liked Doc Ock as the villain way more than I liked Hobgoblin.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with you on that.
He was the more interesting villain.
And he emotionally sold it. And that was my problem with Pedro Pascal is we get one scene with him and his kid to explain his motivation. And then the rest of it, he just looks like a whiny, greedy, like that one scene didn't carry me where Doc Ock's love of his wife and he was pummeled over and over again.
Yeah.
So I'll be the first one to say in Spider-Man 2, I was rooting for Doc Ock to win that fight.
Well, and they try to give us that emotional touchstone for Max Lord at the end when we see his abusive upbringing and how he was made fun of and the struggles that he had, but it's too late at that point. Yeah,
like where was that flashback when we needed to establish you as a character?
Yeah, well, and they could have done this very fascinating tandem flashback, which they kind of did with the Star Trek reboot and giving us Kid Kirk and Kid Spock to give us a side-by-side comparison of their childhoods and the similarities and dissimilarities. So they could have done that with Max Lord and Diana to show us she had this supportive upbringing that helped her become the person that she is today. And Max Lord had this destructive, abusive upbringing that also created the person that he is today. And if they had done that, that would have positioned Max Lord as the more interesting villain, to be honest.
And so my other major issue with this film was the tone. The tone was very confusing.
Yeah.
I laughed at it and not in the spots that were supposed to be funny. The mall scene with the lasso was over the top outlandish. It was,
and I loved it for it, honestly.
It was not cheesy, not early Wonder Woman cheese. This was Shazam level humor.
Mm-hmm.
In what the first movie was kind of serious, like,
and they were trying to pivot. The moment in the mall though that really is like, oh, I love this so much, is the little girl. They wink at each other. They got like a little inside joke. And those moments are so Wonder Woman.
And that moment worked.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie tried to have that moment again and again, which I would have supported, except so there is a scene where Wonder Woman finally learns how to fly.
I cried. I gotta admit, I cried.
I wanted her to be struck down by lightning.
What?
I was so infuriated with the plot at this point. I was wishing everyone... I wanted Warner Brothers to burn at this point.
Oh my God.
I was so angry. And they could have done... There was a funny thing that happened when she was flying. Did you notice how she tested out every superhero flight stance?
Yes, and I loved it.
Except it wasn't funny. It was awkward and forced, and like she could have, and this is all she needed to do. She needed to be in on the joke with us, and all she needed to do was find the right pose that was her pose.
Yeah.
And just smirk. Just
give
a little shit-eating grin like, I know you caught on. I'm with you. But instead, was that supposed to be funny, or was she supposed, like, was she struck? Like, I didn't know where I was supposed to find humor in the film after that little wink scene. And that made me angry because they were there.
Yeah. I didn't think about it like that, but that is an incredibly good point. She wasn't in on any of the jokes with us. Although I will say the scene and let me just say up front, listeners, we are going to talk about the very problematic consent issues with Steve Trevor in a few minutes. But the scene that I did think was freaking hysterical and was kind of fodder for bad 80s fashion was trying to figure out what the hell Steve should wear.
Yes.
Like, that was hilarious to me.
And I actually wondered, because this was kind of a funny, and like they spent a lot of time on it, like way more than was appropriate.
Yeah, I know.
Partly made it funny. It made it even funnier. But also, now I want to go rewatch the original Wonder Woman, and I want to see if any of those outfits he wore were in, or if in the comic book, any of those were outfits that got pulled.
I wonder, so the outfit they made such a big deal about, the scarf one, that...
oh, yeah.
I think that was an outfit that Steve wore in the 80s show. And I think that if they had drawn some iconic moments from the 80s show, or 70s, it was in the 70s. It didn't go into the 80s. But there were some iconic Wonder Woman 80s moments that they could have pulled from. I don't know. I feel like all of those were very missed opportunities.
And then there were plot holes to the point where you actually had to stop asking, or you did ruin your own experience, and I ruined my own experience. Simple things like, why does that jet at a museum have a full tank of gas? And since when has a jet been able to go across the globe and back on a single tank of fuel?
Okay, speaking of the invisible plane, though, I kind of liked how they did the origin of that, because it always struck me as ridiculous that this Grecian island would have an invisible plane to begin with. So I loved that she made her own invisible plane. And I will tell you right now, I think for me, some of my love of the film comes from they did tap into a few of the things I remember from my childhood. And the invisible plane was something, for whatever reason, that since I was a little girl, I have loved. It's ridiculous. It's flat out the stupidest thing. I will grant you that. But I squealed like a little girl when I realized she was going to get to make the invisible jet. Like, I just lost my mind.
Which was horribly ham-fisted into the plot that had
Yes.
no purpose being there. And
Yes, exactly.
And it could have easily been fixed if earlier we just saw her doing it to the coffee cup that she lost.
Exactly. They didn't set up that. It came out of the blue. It really did come out of the blue. There was no setup for that. None of that.
There are no men on Themyscira. That includes Zeus. She does not have a father. She was made from clay. You just rewrote your own origin story.
Actually, DC
Go read the comic.
Actually, DC did rewrite it. That Zeus was her father. That is new canon from the new 52s.
But in the first one,
she says, I had no father. Well, but she says, I had no father. I was brought to life by Zeus. Yes. I know. It is a stretch. It is a total stretch.
And again, and this was the problem. Like, I know people gave Patty Jenkins a lot of crap for this, and I don't think that this is a Patty Jenkins fault. This was a conceptual writer's fault. There were somewhere, and I'm going to blame a studio exec because I don't know who else to blame. But someone was like, yeah, we want to tie in the invisible jet from the cartoon. Make it happen. But we don't have a spot. I said, make it happen.
Yeah.
And there were just so many moments like that felt like the first half of the movie got filmed and then the second half got filmed, but they didn't connect pieces. Again, if you had just made her practicing just a quick 10, 15 second scene, when it happened there, you would have been like, oh, I saw where you were going with that. You led me astray, and here we are.
Well, and the thing, you bring up a really good point. The first movie was so tight.
Yeah.
It was tight. There were some problems, but they weren't glaring. There weren't huge plot holes. There weren't confusing moments. There weren't elements that didn't tie back to something earlier in the film, which does, and I agree with you, this makes me think this is not a Patty Jenkins as a filmmaker problem. It makes me think the studio was like, oh shit, Wonder Woman can make money. Well, we need to pay attention, and now in the sequel, they're wanting to put their fingers in the pie. And, they have to earn a paycheck somehow. So.
Well, and there's a lot of confusion about this because everyone's firing back at each other. And I don't think we'll ever know for certain. But I realized Patty Jenkins didn't actually write the ending of the first Wonder Woman.
Really?
Studio got involved and said, this is how it's going to go. All right.
Does that mean the killing of Steve Trevor or?
I don't know. But so there was no villain in the first movie. There is an unknown evil and she is looking for it, but no one believes that it exists. And so you, the viewer, eventually are like, oh, it's a concept she's hunting. It's not a real thing. And then boom, out of nowhere, it's a person. Oh. And there's a clear moment when the bad guy becomes Ares, right? Ares. That you're like, this does not line up to the first part of the movie. Like, there's a detachment. And I'm wondering if there is literally a line and you're like, here we are. Oh, studio exec got involved. Because there was a...
That might have been, she did have to fight tooth and nail for that no man's land scene in the first, which just boggles my fucking mind because it is a Wonder Woman. It is the Wonder Woman scene. So I wonder if in order to have that, she did have to compromise on Ares. But I do feel like I feel personally like they did set up Ares as that person, but it was ephemeral. It wasn't there wasn't a solid line that you could kind of like follow along. It's more like a feeling throughout the movie, and then there he is.
And Ares wouldn't have been the bad part of it. It was the person that he was, the character, that didn't seem to have enough relevancy in the plot to be the big bad at the end. Like, that was the piece of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
But in this movie, Pedro Pascal is made out to be the villain the whole time. Oh yeah, by the way, there's Kristen Wiig plotline happening, and
way more interesting. We have
to tie them in at some point, and I will give them props so Kristen Wiig wants to be more like Diana. That's her first wish, and because not explained in the plot, we had to digest this and pick it apart to figure this out. She makes a wish on the original stone and gets her wish to be more like Diana, which gives her powers.
Yeah, but it sacrifices her humanity. And
Pedro Pascal becomes the stone, so she gets a second wish.
Kind of. It is murky because, but what happens is you see it, and it's just a tiny moment. And I've seen the movie twice, and I was looking for it the second time. But there's a moment when he's doing the broadcast and she's standing there and he says, and I give some to you, and he says something similar to what she said in the helicopter, which is she wants to be the apex predator. She wants to be something new. And he flings out his hand and he points at her and he says, and I give it to you. And I'm sharing with you. And then she has this reaction. So whatever he is, the wishing stone is taking, he flung some over to her. I know.
This is like a fantasy novel that doesn't have a magic system and everyone just uses magic.
Yeah. So that is why, and there is a debate. There is a fan debate. Did she lose her powers or not? Because when Max Lord takes back his wish, it breaks all the other wishes that were made on him as the stone, including Kristen Wiig in her cheetah form. But Kristen Wiig we never see her take back her original wish, which was to have powers. Which
completely counteracts the entire plot.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the end piece of it, and this is what ultimately really made me angry. We got woman-splained. She breaks the fourth wall like she's Deadpool, and then speaks at us.
Wonder Woman?
Yes, she doesn't even break the fourth wall. She actively acknowledges that she was never talking to him, and she's talking to you, the viewer, and she's lecturing you. And at this point, I am so baffled by what's happening in this plot. Why did he get up on that stupid thing? Why does that somehow? What is that thing that he thinks is doing something?
So it's supposed to be. It's never explained, but this is what I've seen other people say. It is supposed to be basically the laser beam, for lack of a better word, the signal that goes up. So he's standing in that signal to absorb those wishes. I know it's
what the flying fuck.
No idea at all.
That is my issue with this plot, and this is why
you're waving your finger at me.
The first Dark Phoenix, I was okay with. Now, was it a bad movie? Yes, I will 100% back you on that. It was a coherent plot that was just not good.
Okay.
This was no longer a coherent plot. What is someone, showrunner, go get me the notes. Someone has to explain to me the plot, because what you think you're showing me is not what's on the screen right now.
Well, and it goes back to what I was talking about. There is no final. I'm split. I'm going to be honest with you, because on the one hand, on the one hand, her talking to people, her finding a way to resolve all of this with compassion and understanding is very Wonder Woman.
Yep.
And if you've only read the New 52 Wonder Woman, you're going to be completely confused, because the New 52 Wonder Woman is frankly a violent bitch.
Yeah.
And I hate that iteration of her. Wonder Woman has always been about compassion. She's always been about the common good. She's always been about trying to reach somebody with compassion and love and understanding first, and her fists second, which is why she spends the entire movie begging Kristen Wiig's character to give up her wish before she starts pummeling her, because she
I
doesn't
love
want to
her
hurt her.
interaction.
I do too. I love it. And that is one reason why there is a part of me that loves her resolution of the Max Lord storyline with compassion and understanding. There is another part of me that's like, that is so anticlimactic. And that is the problem.
I'm not even talking from a movie standpoint. My issue was she didn't have that resolution with him. She had it with me sitting on my couch. Gal Gadot, stop looking at me. You're judging me.
I
and
see what you're saying.
Assumptions about me as a person. Screw you. Like,
I didn't feel that viscerally about it. I really didn't, but I understand what you're saying. She did not confront Max Lord. She confronted everybody else.
And that was the issue. Like,
well, but I think, yeah, I can see what you're saying. I never felt like she was talking to me, the viewer. I felt like she was talking to everybody else in the world.
No, because even if you weren't sure about that, Patty Jenkins was like, let's do a close-up on her face to make sure she's looking directly into the camera.
Okay, I'll grant you that. I didn't feel as strongly as you did about it. But I will say this. That SmackDown with Cheetah was wonderful. That was awesome. I had been waiting to see that.
So I'm going to be 50-50 on this one, because the actual her and Cheetah I was on board for. There's this whole weird underlying subplot with this armor that served no purpose whatsoever. Because why did she need to go get armor with wings to fly when she can already fly?
It looked cool, Remy. It looked cool.
And if she had just gone home to do a fashion montage, I would have been on board with it. That's how heroes get their powers. They put on their outfit.
They put on their outfits. But then we would have had to have had like the bikini one, like outfit.
Yeah, that's what it needed. It needed that second joke again. Now he's gonna put on the fashion.
Yeah. We needed Steve to maybe be like, maybe her outfit gets wrecked or something. Like that would have been funny. Her outfit gets all wrecked. He's like, what are you going to wear now? And she's like, I have some options. And then that would have been hilarious.
And then the movie would have been like, yeah, we went there. And
yeah.
Okay. So my other issue was this armor. What did this armor actually do?
It looked pretty.
It looked pretty. It literally fell apart the moment it was punched. Okay.
It was shredded. Cheetah did shred it, which I was disappointed about. I was like, wait a minute, you're trying to tell me this armor withstood like thousands of men pummeling it, but Cheetah's claws somehow shredded the wings? I was disappointed about that. But honestly, I will go balls to the wall defending this outfit choice because I thought it was fucking amazing.
My only other issue with the Cheetah fight scene, and this was a problem throughout the whole movie, is the cinematography of it. Was your cameraman high? Because they're like, granted, it's over the top, and I'm on board with the over the topness of a basically Cirque du Soleil with Cheetah and Wonder Woman. I'm on board for that.
That's what you're supposed to have with Cheetah. I mean, she's got more agility than Wonder Woman. She is slightly stronger than Wonder Woman. She is faster than Wonder Woman. She should be beating the shit out of Wonder Woman.
Except the cameraman was like, I wonder how close we can get. I wonder if we can take a 3/4 view of the moon in the background and look, a plant. We should just put the camera on that. The fight's happening over there, everybody. Oh, wait, we're doing something artsy in that direction, though. And here's the thing. There are times when the camera is trying to hide a bad makeup job. There are times when the special effects aren't up to par, so the camera does trickery to hide it. That wasn't the case here.
No.
That was the reason it was low lit, and that was the reason it was highly blue tinted. I get that. But you didn't show the action, and there was good action here. And then my final myth part was, you obviously know how it's going to end. She's going to electrocute her. Trish, if you and I were in a bathtub and we put the toaster in, did you know only one of us gets electrocuted?
That was a huge hole. And Diana is in full-on metal armor. She should have been toasted along with Cheetah. No, I will give you that fully. I was very confused by that moment. I will tell you, and we do need to move on to the glaring consent issues because we're almost at an hour. But the one thing I will say about that, really quick to finish off the Cheetah conversation, is that I had a moment of, oh my God, did she kill her? Because that will completely ruin this for me. And she didn't. Again, Wonder Woman doesn't kill. She knocked her out. She was compassionate. She was tender with her. At no point was she judgy. Nope. I mean, and I think that if they had just stuck with Cheetah and Wonder Woman, give us a Cheetah Wonder Woman film, then they would have had
the typical superhero sequel of let's add more villains. And
it never works. I don't know why people think that they need to do that. So we need to talk about the consent issue with Steve Trevor. Now, this is something that I am ashamed to say on a first viewing I didn't catch until a friend mentioned it. And then I really started to think about it, and I was like, shit, that's icky. That's super icky.
Diana wishes for Steve Trevor to come back. She wants her love back. And instead of resurrecting a corpse, which would have been kind of gross, it basically puts Steve Trevor's soul into some random dude's body. Okay, fine. We've dealt with this plot. Whoa, she just shagged him.
Yeah.
First off, I know that he convinced you, but Wonder Woman, like, go on a date that doesn't involve a war. Like, you've only known this guy for like an accumulative week at this point. And you hop into bed. Okay. Not judging you on that one, like, go you, but
the thing is, there were so many different ways you could have brought Steve Trevor back. I mean, body swapping was one option, okay. But then if you're going to do that, don't have them have sex.
And
have Diana have that.
The sex. It was, they had a conversation about what happened to the dude whose body he took over. Like, they acknowledged that, where'd he go?
Yeah.
Like, they are remorseful that this individual is gone.
Yep.
But let me use his body as I please. And the people have brought up that, well, this gets done in movies all the time. Okay, people run red light all the time, so I'm going to run a red light all the time. Like, one bad doesn't deserve a second bad. So,
and we talked about this before the show. What worked in the 80s doesn't work now. Like, for instance, Breakfast Club. There is essentially a sexual assault in that movie. It's not viewed that way at the time that the movie was shot. But if you look at it with our modern day sensibilities about consent, that is a clear sexual assault. You have to look at it with today's views. And like I said, pick another way to bring him back. You want to bring Steve Trevor back and you don't want it to be a moldy corpse. I get that. But we're dealing with magic here. You can make a magic system to do whatever the hell you wanted to do. There were so many different options.
And you broke all your own rules in the movie. So why was that the rule?
Exactly. And here's the thing is, I think the Wish Stone screwed up. She asked for Steve back. She didn't ask for Steve stuffed in a meat suit of another kind. She literally asked for Steve. How is that giving her Steve back?
And Patty Jenkins made a comment about it being a body swap situation. And I just wanted to ask why. Like,
Yeah.
did you watch a body swap movie that morning and decide, like, well, this is the way the plot should go?
It literally had no impact on the greater plot, though.
No, it didn't. Though, if it wasn't creepy the first time, then she meets the person, the actual dude who she already had sex with later. And they try to pass it off as well, maybe that will be the new love interest. Well, at that point, it's used goods. She's been there, done that.
Well, and on a second viewing, I was really creeped out by that. I was like, ew, no, ew.
And what made me mad is that is not a very Wonder Woman thing to do.
No. Well, and they, like you said, they had the conversation about the body swap. Maybe they do want to be together. Maybe she really does want to be with him, but then have that conversation about, but we can't. We can't do that.
Like, and it felt like a moral high ground character, and I do think Wonder Woman tries to maintain a moral high ground a lot of the time. A very immoral act, and then we're going to jab the immoral act by making it extra immoral.
The choice was mind-boggling, honestly.
And I think that was what the whole movie had, a lot of choices that I wanted to phone someone and be like, why? You need to defend your choice. And if you can give me a logical reason that maybe I'm not seeing, I'm on board. I want to like this film. Matter of fact, I found out it was greenlit for the third one before the second one.
Yep.
I hated that second one. Matter of fact, I've already said this, I would rather watch Batman versus Superman again.
You disappoint me. That's terrible. That's terrible.
And yet, I still want Wonder Woman 3 because there's more to be done with the character. There's more potential with the plot. Patty Jenkins had a flop. Guess what? I love the Wachowski sisters. They made Matrix 3.
Yeah, no, that was... Yeah. And this is the thing, I think we need to start wrapping it up probably with this conversation, but this thing that I feel like that's when some of the bad reviews started coming out, when people started pointing out the deep flaws of the movie, I got a little protective. I got a little overprotective, and here's why. Women aren't allowed to have flops, especially women who make action films or superhero movies, and especially if those movies center around a female character. We as women storytellers, if you have a female hero, those narratives are not allowed to fail at all, ever, because it is used as proof that female filmmakers can't make action films or female heroes don't make lucrative films. And so I got really nervous and I got really afraid and I got really pissed off because within 48 hours, those conversations were popping up everywhere. And it's not fair because Zack Snyder is allowed to literally have Batman and Superman take giant dumps in their suits in Batman versus Superman, and he's allowed to make Justice League, but Patty Jenkins lands one turd, and suddenly we need to have a deep conversation about female-led superhero films.
You know what they need to do is they need to give her $30 million and make a Patty Jenkins cut. Don't get me wrong. While I say I would like Batman versus Superman more than Wonder Woman 2, Zack Snyder's still a tool.
He's a total tool bag. And I'll tell you one thing, at least Patty Jenkins understands Wonder Woman. She doesn't have her standing there with the severed heads of her enemies at her feet, like Zack Snyder has apparently done for his reshoots.
I will say I liked Watchmen. That is my Zack Snyder go-to film. The rest of them, dude, Patty Jenkins is running 50-50 and you're at like what? 99 out of 100?
Yeah, exactly. No.
And
he reminds me of J.J. Abrams. Great, you have great high-level concepts, but you can't land the fucking ship to save your life.
I'm watching Tenet tomorrow, where I will get to see Chris Nolan talk about how wonderful Chris Nolan is for 2 hours.
At least Chris Nolan knows how to do a 3-act structure. In my opinion, J.J. Abrams and Zack Snyder do not know how to finish a narrative at all.
So, in
Sorry,
closing,
we ran over.
I'm going to say it's a bad movie. Is it a movie worth watching? Yeah, it's freaking Wonder Woman. Go watch it.
And watch it for the stinger.
Stinger?
You didn't see the stinger? You didn't stick around for the bumper?
Oh, that also I thought was trash.
Oh my God.
But
Seriously?
I'm not going to talk about it because I respect her too much.
All right. I loved it. I think I liked it more than you. I would actually give it 3 capes.
I don't even know if I can give it a cape rating.
Ouch.
I said I would rather watch the newest Fantastic Four.
Okay. So Jeremy says it's totally awful, but watch it, and I'm saying it's middling. Go watch it.
1 cape, because I can think of 0 capes. 1 cape.
Okay.
All right. We will be back in 2 weeks. In the meantime, if you need more superhero goodness, we are going to be alternating every other week. Behind the Mask will come out the week after this, and then we will. And so we're going to be doing every other. So we want to make sure you stay full of your superhero goodness.
Thank you for sticking around with us.
To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and YouTube fans.